Here are some more derivatives. The ones we've done so far, derivative sine x is cosine x, derivative cosine x is negative sine x. So these are two we've done so far, and the rest here you pretty much need to memorize. Derivative tan x is secant squared x. So these four right here, they aren't that common, but it's still good to memorize because they do show up like on the AP exam. Derivative cotangent x is negative cosecant squared x. Derivative secant x is secant x times tan x. Derivative of cosecant x is negative cosecant x cotangent x. So you might be like, oh, what is all this? So if you recall from trig, a lot of these identities, even if you just know these two here, you can use the product or quotient rule to help you figure these out. So like tan x, for example, is equivalent to, not the derivative, just tan x is equivalent to sine x over cosine x. Secant x is the same as 1 over cosine x. Cosecant x is equal to 1 over sine x. And cotangent x is equal to 1 over tangent x. So for example, if you rewrote the tan x as a sin x over cosine x and used the quotient rule, you would end up getting a secant squared x, which is just a 1 over cosine squared x. Similarly, if you rewrote these as the fractions and then did the derivatives, you could also kind of get your way to these if you really don't want to memorize them. But for now, you can practice them if you want, but for now, I'd recommend you memorize these. So here are just some common struggles when dealing with trig derivatives. Is just memorizing some of the derivatives, unit circle values, manipulating, simplifying trig expressions, and then entering those in a calculator. So here are some practice questions here. First one, find the derivative of y is equals sine x tan x. You see here it's a sine x times a tan x. This is product rule. So with this, let's just say dy dx is equal to, take the derivative of the first, derivative of sine x is cosine x, leave the second, and then vice versa, plus sine x times the derivative of tan x, which is secant squared x. And you can just leave it like that. Another example here. Find f prime of pi over 6 if f of x equals x over secant x. So, first we gotta do is find f prime of x. This is quotient rule because it's x divided by secant x. So, this is low d high secant x low d high times, well, derivative of x is just 1, so I don't have to write the times 1, minus high d low. The derivative of secant x is secant x tan x. All over low low secant squared of x. So how you would do this on the calculator is a little challenging. You have to, so the calculator, your calculator doesn't, I believe, have any of these here, like the secant function. It has tan, sine, and cosine, but doesn't have secant, doesn't have cosecant, doesn't have cotangent. So if you want to type this on the calculator, like find f prime of pi over 6, what you would do is, instead of secant of pi over 6, you do 1 over cosine pi over 6 minus pi over 6 times 1 over cosine pi over 6, because secant pi over 6 is 1 over cosine pi over 6. And then you should have the tan button here, so it'd be tan pi over 6. So you just do that. If you did not have a tangent button for some reason, you could do sine of pi over 6 divided by cosine pi over 6. And then secant squared of x, that's just, well, 1 over cosine pi over 6, all squared. enter this into the calculator, you should get an answer of root 3 over 2 minus pi over 12. Or in decimal form, you should have gotten 0.604. So for these questions, I'm going to want you to show like the first step, second step, and then you have to use your calculator to do this. If you just do these with just the answer, I'm going to assume that you used like the calculate derivative at a point function. You won't get credit. So you have to show this work, but then you can enter all the trig stuff and all that into the calculator from there. All right, so next, estimate the derivative with a calculator. So they said you can use a calculator this time, so let's use it. Estimate the derivative with a calculator of this function at x is equal to 2. So remember, if you want to write this on a calculator, you can rewrite this as g of x is equal to 1 over, you can do the sine of 4x, kind of like all that, squared. That's what we need to input in the calculator. So get our calculator out. Math 8 is the derivative. Derivative is math 8. Variable is x. We have a fraction here, so it's easiest if you just enter the fraction. Math, right arrow key up, the n divided by d. Now we can just do enter 1 over, we can do sine of 4x squared at x is equal to 2. And your answer should be 1.2019, which rounds to 1.202. So we can say g prime of 2 is equal to 1.202. Just like that.